sometimes when we think about grief, at least for me, it's just like I would always associate it with like the biggest losses in life, losing a loved one, things like that. But like we grieve every day, little baby grief cycles that we're always kind of like fighting through. And if you're not like working through them, you just get caught in it, and it just builds
You sort of
up.
sleep under the rug.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was just kind of trying to just run straight to that feeling and kind of, sort of in real time document it over the past 2 years as accurately as I could and honestly as I could, Oh, dude, it's been insane. It's been insane. Yeah, I was working on that record Memoria for about like 2 years.
Since the EP, the last EP.
Since the EP and even before it. Yeah, I was starting to work on a lot of those songs, like even before a lot of the It Must Be Love stuff.
Yeah.
That was just kind of like a pit stop I had made along the way of like, I was writing a lot about similar themes like love, loss, and grief, and then just a few of the songs, being the EP, were just like a little bit more like rose tinted, a little bit more just like, kind of happy go lucky, like love. And I'm like, let me just like let this be a moment. Did that, and then kind of came back to this sort of like grief cycle, kind of larger LP. So yeah, man, it's like 2 years in the making.
It was different than It Must Be Love. Like it was, I felt it was the love, similar themes, but it touched a lot more on grief.
Yeah.
But I almost feel it, like, do you feel like it was a launching point for this project?
For sure. I think it was just, for me, I think for a while I was sort of like dodging, just like talking about love. I don't know. To me, it's like writing a love song. It's like, yeah, you and everyone else, bro. It's just like love songs are always the most obvious thing to step to, because it's just like,
It's such a powerful emotion.
It's such a powerful emotion, and we all feel it. And so, but I think, I was just sort of like, let me just like run straight to that, because that's how I was feeling at the time. I was like, I really want to just like write love songs and not be too like dodgy with it. Just like tell it how it is, and even just saying love outright. It's just like, as sort of like a mantra. So that was kind of the vibe for that. And then, yeah, I think for me, the Memoria stuff was just like, grief is also just showing that like lost side of it, and the full spectrum of like the high highs, the low lows, and everything in between. And grief is just such a non-linear thing. And that's kind of, in starting to work on that record, there was like a few things that I feel like I was really holding on to, just baggage that I was holding on to. Grieving, both in like a romantic, intimate sense, but also just like, losing loved ones in the physical and all that. And just like, how do you just, I don't know. I think sometimes when we think about grief, at least for me, it's just like, I would always associate it with like the biggest losses in life, losing a loved one, things like that. But like, we grieve every day, little baby grief cycles that we're always kind of like fighting through. And if you're not like working through them, you just get caught in it, and it just builds up.
You sort of sleep under the rug.
Yeah, 100%. So I think for me, it was just kind of trying to just run straight to that feeling and kind of, sort of in real time document it over the past 2 years as accurately as I could and honestly as I could,
Well, the album is, like you said, it's such about grief. It's these like visceral emotions that are so that everybody feels, but they're darker emotions that you really have to sit with, right? And things that are difficult. And you mentioned it's been stuff you've been carrying for a while, and sort of now was the time that you were ready to talk about it. And so when did you realize that now was, okay, I'm ready to sort of face these things I'm carrying head on, and be able to create something like this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a really good question. Yeah, I think for me, still there was like a little bit of a curtain even through a lot of the music. Like for me, it was more so about like getting out the emotion, It was more so about like getting out the feeling over just like very like directly telling even like bar for bar the story of what happened, I kind of use this like sort of like bluesy May like muse as like this sort of just like this force that kind of was like over the whole, like this grief force, it's like, yes, it could be like a woman, but it's like, it's more than that. It's just like, it's sort of this kind of like overarching presence that I kind of had that was sort of like shaping, the grief journey in a way, if that makes sense. So I think, for me, I definitely like needed a little bit of a buffer of separation to like, you know, some of those songs were like really real, you know, like a song like Green Vows was like a song that was like, I really recorded it in a moment, you know, just on like a mic in like a one take, you know, in my studio. This was like a year or two ago, and it was just like blowing out my vocal cords, and like it was just such a, I just was really feeling it, you know. And I think so it was more, I think, about the catharsis and just getting out the feeling, really more so for myself, you know. I think first,
that's what it is most of the time.
For
a lot
sure.
of times as an artist,
yeah
that's how you sort of get those things out, I feel like, in a creative sense.
Totally.
But how do you, was there a moment when you sort of, I mean, you had to grapple with these feelings, right? We talked about sweeping them under the rug, and you had to face them. Like, what, you could have done this a couple years ago. You could have put it in the EP. You could have done it, but it took you until now in the debut project really to decide, like, I want to talk about these things and hit them head on. What was the change in between that time that made you feel like ready to do that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was just, you know, I started making music like really like 6 years ago, you know, kind of like over the pandemic. And I think you know, as soon as I started making, I started releasing music. So there was, I think for me, just like, I had the training wheels on over the past few years. And I think, you know, I still feel like I'm a student of the game, just figuring it out.
You'll always be a student.
Yeah, of course. Always a student, you know, never the master. But yeah, I think I just really needed to, for me, it was more so just writing, like, really, like, accurately, like just telling stories and being very direct about how I'm feeling was something that wasn't so intuitive for me. I think the singing and the melodies and just like that stuff was a little bit easier, but I think, you know, the harder part for me was just really like writing things down. Like Memoria In Blue was my first time of really like being in my journal and trying to just like really like, yo, how do I feel about this?
Yeah.
And even if I'm talking about it a little bit more like metaphorically or kind of like through these like sneaky little allegories, like how can I really just like still like tell the story and like be honest about it? So I think for me, it was more so just like learning how to be a writer, and also like the connection between like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and now I'm gonna make a song about it, you know? Versus for me, I think, you know, over the, like, you know, the past, you know, 3-4 years prior, it was a lot more just like, how do I do this? Like just kind of just trying to find my bearings with all of it, you know, like
you feel
mumbling
like you
into
settled in
the
a bit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah, I think the confidence was just like, you know, it was something new. It was like, okay, I'm feeling a lot right now, and damn it if I don't like, you know, turn this into something that is like more of a full-length thing, a full-length story, you know.
And then what do you think the changes between, you know, It Must Be Love to now? Because as far as like the recording process and just the mental state you had to be in to record it, you're talking about actually writing these things down and sort of journaling about it. So that It Must Be Love was made in a different way.
Yeah. It Must Be Love was interesting because like that was sort of like just total intuition, just like feeling. Like I don't even really remember making most of those songs. It was just like the summertime, and all those songs feel very like summery, you know, but it was just I had started making songs for Memoria in the winter, you know, and this was like maybe like 2024, and you know, I just kind of like gotten out of this like record deal, and I was just like very confused, and I think in a lot of ways I had sort of like lost the like just like beginner's mind, like love and joy for like making music. Like I kind of felt like I was on the conveyor belt a little bit, you know, just with myself. Like it's not like anyone was really putting me on it, but I just like I really needed to like fall back in love with making music.
Yeah.
And I think for me, It Must Be Love was just like, you know, writing like songs that just made me feel good, you know, that I didn't have to be so heady about. I'm just like, I'm such a like OCD, like overthinker kind of guy, you know? And so for me, like that was really almost in a way, I think just a practice and like making things that like just feel good, you know?
Yeah.
I wasn't second guessing anything. I was like, cool, here's a song idea, make it in a day, put it out, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think, you know, talking about like the kind of like training wheels thing, I think I just needed that practice a little bit before the like full length record, you know?
Yeah. But you talk about the, you know, those being on It Must Be Love, more happy, just sort of fun songs, just you being in the moment. And
Yeah.
this is in a sense it's deeper, it's darker, it's you having to be really honest with yourself, and I'm assuming it was more difficult to make for you.
Yeah, for sure. Like talking about loss is that's a much more kind of, at least for me, I think it was something a bit more complex than writing a kind of simple love song,
For sure.
a feel good love song.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, like something, just going back to the whole like kind of pen and pad thing, it was just something that I think for me really required. It demanded me to just like sit with my feelings and like really write it down. Like I had to do that.
Is that the first time you've done that as an artist?
For sure, yeah. I think maybe when I first started making music, I was like, oh, that's what artists do. They like journal about their feelings, But then I think I quickly lost that, and it was more about just like mumble first and then just like figure it out later. Which is also, there's no right way to do it. I made great songs kind of doing that. But yeah, I think it was just like when you're really trying to talk about an emotion that just like carries so much weight, it's like, dude, you gotta really think about what you're saying.
And you can't fake it. I think is the biggest part. It's like you have to put yourself you have to relive a lot of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it can't really be a surface level thing of like, I'm gonna make a song about loss or a relationship ending. It's like you really have to relive it almost, don't you?
Yeah, I think people can tell if it comes from a real place if you're writing a song about loss. I think love's a lot more easy to kind of like kind of fluff up, but like it's
for
like
sure.
And I think for me too, a lot of that journey as an artist, just working the muscle is also like in the performance. Like I really I care a lot about like how I perform a song when I sing on a record. And I think this in showing, in talking about grief and loss, it's like all the content, it's about the content, sure, but it's also about like the feeling and the conviction and like how you're singing it. And for me, I was like, like I need a like I said, in the case of like a song like Green Boughs or Bluesy May, it's like a lot of these songs that I really was like, all right, I need to like be in that headspace and be going through that shit in real time when I step into the studio, so that like when I sing it, it's believable, and it's real.
That's one of the main things I noticed too, is that and there's such you deliver your lyrics and just the song with such conviction of you can feel the artist through the music, and that's I think that's like one of the most important parts of especially with this project and the topics that you're talking about with grief and loss. It's like we talk about faking it all you want, but this is something you can't.
Like, no.
And love, on that sense, like you said, it's like a lot of people, you can get an idea of it, you can see the movies or whatever and just sort of have this idea, but there's not really a way to fake loss.
No, you can't.
You can't fake the feeling you get from losing something. You can't.
For sure. Yeah. So that for me too was really a cool exercise, and like I learned a lot just from like as a vocalist, just like how can I really like tap into that feeling. And I think for me too, like most of the music that I was listening to and inspired by when I was working on this album were it's a lot of listening back, like just for me it was like a ton of Prince and Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and Joni Mitchell and a lot of these like just like generational songwriters. And I think on top of being incredible storytellers and all of them, it's just like the performance and the yearning. Like that was something that was just such a obvious through line for me in all my like my goats, my North Star kind of like legends that I look up to and was inspired by when working on this project. And like all people that were just kind of stepping in the studio sometimes just with a dynamic mic, and they're just like going for it, and they're singing in one take, and like whatever is said, and there's
so many layers to it. So every song has so many layers with the background vocals and just or it's clapping or whatever. There's so much. There's so many layers to it that really create a really unique experience and are part of the reason why you can feel so much emotion in in the music.
It means a lot, bro.
Yeah. How do you get yourself in a mental space to be able to do that? Because like we said, you can't fake it. It's a lot about reliving a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And you have to get yourself to a point where you're able to sing with this conviction of like, I'm really going through it. And so how are you able on here to get yourself back into that space while you're ready to record?
Yeah. I think this project was interesting because like, you know, like we're saying, you know, you can't fake the feeling. Like for a while when I first started making music, I kind of felt like I was always just like you know, same thing with basketball like we're talking about, you know. It's like, you know, there was a 7-day-a-week quota of like, all right, I got to get my shots up, you know, like every day I have to be in the gym, you know. And I think the same for me was like, you know, if I had to lock in on school or whatever, you know, for a while when I was like just like really one-tracked about that, you know, getting the good grades and stuff, it's just like I always saw locking in as like, cool, you just do it like 8 days a week. You just don't stop doing it. Every day you got to be doing it. But that's not the case for music.
Doesn't work like that in a creative space at all. You have to be inspired.
Not at all. And for a while, I think I was trying to like take that same psychology and apply it to like my art. And like, I just got so burnt out and I didn't really have anything to say because it's just like you're not living, you know. So I think a lot of it for Memoria was like, oh damn, you gotta live some life, bro. Like I definitely kind of 2024 like had this really just like harsh look in the mirror kind of moment, and I was just like so obsessive about like whoever the fuck Noah Guy the artist is, you know. But it's like, yeah, sure, but like who is Noah Guy the human? And I didn't really know. I kind of had that really dark moment of like, damn, bro, you gotta be human. You gotta live life. You gotta touch grass.
And so how'd you figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, just living life, man. You know, like heartbreak and, you know, new friendships and, you know, touching back in with family and, you know, like relationships that were fractured in my life that I really needed to just like pour into and patch up. And I think all those things took time. And so for me, you know, when talking about just like getting there in the studio, it's just like the record just took me more time. You know, this project, you know, I it wasn't something I could have just like locked in on, you know, in a month and just banged it out. You know, it was stories that needed to kind of just, you know, grow and, you know, mature over, you know, 2-3 years that I was making it. So, you know, for the next album, I'd be a lot more interested in like the creative process of like really just like, okay, what if I just like went in the studio for a month or 2 months and I gave myself that time, like what kind of album could I make? You know, it's going to be a very different album than Memoria. But I think for, again, like, you know, topics of love, loss, grief, you know, just grief as an overarching kind of emotion and feeling. That was just something that I just needed to like, that time needed to kind of run its course on, you know? Yeah.
In the same breath, it's also, even though, you know, there's a lot of themes of grief and loss on the project, it's a celebration in a lot of ways. And I know you talk about that of the other positive side of being able to appreciate those things that did happen, right? And I love the idea of it, of having these feelings and just as human beings having these feelings and not shying away from them, good or bad, right? But it's a very fine line in, you know, being able to sort of appreciate those things when looking back on them, right? Like a relationship, you think it's the best thing in the world and you get out of it and all you feel is that loss, right? And you don't even remember the good stuff that happened in it. So how, like for you, when were you able to, you've obviously by the end of this album come to the realization of like, there are things I can appreciate in the loss, in these past negative things that may have happened. When were you able to come to that realization for yourself?
I think, it was definitely kind of like well underway into like working on the songs for sure.
So it wasn't before the project started?
No, not at all. Yeah, Memoria was not the first name of the project, you know, like that was something that I kind of like fourth quarter, you know, decision. Like before submitting, I was like, oh, that's what this is. And like for me, like you're saying, the realization that I kind of came to is like, you know, with a lot of the sort of like emotions that I was dodging around, like, you know, grief and this sort of baggage and just like, just kind of like ducking those emotions and not really getting to the root of it or facing it forward. You know, it's like, I don't know. I think as humans, it's like when you go through something really intense, when you lose someone or something and you're just like, you're grieving something, oftentimes like the knee-jerk reaction, at least for me, was just to like press delete, like just like it's almost too painful to like kind of like live with that and take it with you. So like let's just kind of like obscure it and just
pretend
like,
it never happened.
Yeah. And yeah, I was doing that a lot in my life, and so I think the memory thing is something really important. That for me was just something I was really that became this like main, like kind of overarching, like sort of motif or something to it. It was just like, there's like how you like hold memories, like that's really what it was for me, is like you have that choice, when you whether it's a relationship that you walk away from, like you're saying, it's just like, do you want to just forget? Because if you forget, maybe that in the short term kind of saves you from like really feeling a lot of the pain and the shitty stuff, but you're also robbing yourself of really like getting to the root of it all, and also like appreciating the beautiful moments. I think the project, to me, like you were saying, like I didn't want it, like I wanted the project to feel kind of like a celebration. Like I wanted it to feel pretty triumphant. There's like low moments for sure, but then there's songs that are pretty like explosive and triumphant,
100%,
and feel like a victory, a victory lap. And so I think that sort of realization, I think, was the thing that I kind of quickly caught on to when I started working on songs like Bluesy May and things like that. It's like, I feel this way, I feel really low, but like instinctually I really want to make a song that feels like a fucking celebration, you know? And I think that's because like there's a lot of heroism in grief, I think there's more heroism than misery, I think when you kind of get to the other side of it, when you sort of reach acceptance and you get through all the dark, scary stuff, you come out the other end, it's like, damn, I did that,
But it's so difficult to get to that side. I'm trying to think, even in my life, like it's I mean, I push a lot of those things away, I feel like, I don't want to, but I feel like it's hard. It is hard to really like, get to that point. And so I'm going to dig a little deeper and ask you, like, do you remember a point? You said you didn't start this album out feeling like that, feeling like, being able to celebrate these things and find the, remember those things. But do you remember a point, like what made you able to have that switch where you sort of felt like, okay, this might seem, all bad, I want to push this away, but now I can really start to appreciate and be at a place where I feel at peace with it and able to reflect on those good memories I have. Was there something in particular that you feel like was that switch? Because I haven't figured that switch out yet.
Yeah, dude. I think a lot of it for me was like, and maybe this sounds just like kind of corny or whatever, but like friendships, community. Like I really think I needed like a soundboard. When I started working on this project, I was pretty like self-isolated, I think, like just in like the way I made music, but also just like my day-to-day life, and going back to the whole thing about just feeling like I didn't really know who I was as a human. Like there was just a lot more soul searching I felt like I needed to do in my early 20s or whatever. So yeah, I think having like a really great group of friends, this is maybe kind of veering off track a little bit, but something I was talking to my manager about earlier is just like finding like friends as a man in your 20s is something that's like kind of hard to like, kind of impossible. Like
if you're not in a setting that's school or something, like we're all forced to be in the same place.
Like just like institutional like something that is forcing you to be together, like you're saying. And so that was something that I think I found kind of in a really, really like deep, amazing, beautiful way, is just like male friendship and love. And that for me was huge, I think, in being able to like, talk about these things that you're saying, like kind of have the courage, have the strength to sort of face it forward. And it's like it's something rare and something I'm like really, really, just like so grateful for, and realize is kind of a rare thing, man. And like
100%,
I don't know, maybe that's a little off track, but just something I was thinking about.
No, yeah, it totally makes sense. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, like we said, it's hard to find those people, and but it seems like that's really what helped you get to a place where you can sort of be at peace with these things that happen.
For sure. And also, like, a lot of my best friends, you know, the people that worked on this record are kind of my, like, closest friends, you know, in a lot of ways. My main producer, who I pretty much make everything with, you know, he was someone that was just, like, emotionally and also creatively was just, like, such an anchor for me, kind of opening up the door, you know, to, like, talking about these more intense themes and, like, how to talk about it. He was always kind of pushing me to, like, peel back the layers a little bit further. And I think it was something that, like, really needed trust, you know, and needed, like, care, you know,
Absolutely,
to kind of, like, have someone to, like, bounce off those themes and those feelings. So man, it's just it's a really powerful thing. And also too, like, just, you know, all my band members, like, these are people that were also, like, involved in the record, the people I toured with, you know, like, I'm really blessed to say that I have, like, a community of friends that, you know, on a human level, I also really, like, love and trust. And I think if you're making music with, like, your best buddies, like, that's a winning recipe, you know. So very, very fortunate to have kind of found that and really, like, you know, nurtured that through the process of making Memoria, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you know, as a listener, as a fan, I think you can hear the growth in it. You can hear it, you know, by the end of the project, it'd be a celebration, to be a happy thing.
Thanks, bro.
But yeah, I know we got a hard stop here, so
okay, dude, I so appreciate you, man. Just, like, just keep shining the light on the record and taking the time. And
absolutely,
bro, it means a lot.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it too.
Nah, dog.
So,
man,
and hopefully we can talk next time the next one comes out and talk about the change from this one to that
for
one.
sure. So,
yeah. I think it's great for it to be a timestamp of where you're at, and then
of course, man. It would be a blessing, man.